We have with us today a very prominent CEO who's led Mahindra and Mahindra through good times and tough times. Dr. Goenka, thanks for joining us.
How are you?
Now, we were here last year and things weren't looking so good. So, how is it right now, a year down the road?
After a long time, the industry is seeing signs of sort of revival. We have had like 5 months of passenger vehicle side at least growing. But the commercial vehicle segment is sort of growing in patches. The heavy commercial vehicle, which was really very badly burnt, has come back, I think, in a reasonable shape, and we see a consistent growth happening there. But the small commercial vehicles still are suffering fairly significantly. As you said, the growth has not been uniform. There are few companies and few products that have done very well. So one cannot call it a uniform, like everybody is picking up kind of growth. But I think that is the nature of the industry now. You will see that at no point of time will everything be uniformly growing, because the consumer has become very choosy on what the consumer wants to buy, which product, which company, and that you will see. But yes, overall, we are in good shape.
Right. And you just launched a new Scorpio. I want to talk about that, but let's go for a drive.
Certainly.
And have you behind the wheel and hear from you then.
Certainly.
Mahindra & Mahindra, one of India's leading auto companies today, was little more than a homegrown tractor and jeep manufacturer in the 90s. Its fortunes changed with the iconic Scorpio in 2002, and Pawan Goenka, the man who developed that Scorpio, has been an integral part of this transformation. Last month, M&M announced the eagerly awaited new Scorpio. Incidentally, at the same time when the Prime Minister kicked off the Make in India campaign. So what's made the Scorpio such a strong homegrown brand?
Scorpio undoubtedly has been a product that has gone beyond any expectations that we could have had from a new brand that we had launched. And in 2002, when we launched it, we could have never imagined that a Scorpio will do for Mahindra, and to some extent even the reputation of India, and it's done us very well. And as you know, Hormazd, there is no sort of magic pill that one can talk about, or a magic wand that one can talk about, that if you did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you will have an iconic product. If that was so, then everybody will have iconic products. Right. And I think a lot of things that have worked in favor of Scorpio. The first, I think we were at the right time. When we launched this product, SUVs were virtually unknown in India. On our side, we managed to keep the product always current. So even though you would still see the same doors that we designed in 2002, we have always managed to bring in new technologies, refreshes, things, the positioning of the brand itself. We have managed to keep it fresh in some sense. And this is actually a 4th redo of the Scorpio since the time that we have launched. And we have also put in a lot of effort behind building this brand as a sort of adventure brand, a true SUV brand.
So there's a strong emotional connect.
You think to create that emotional connect, I think everything has come together in terms of building what I believe is an iconic brand now in India, coming from an Indian manufacturer.
Right. And let's talk about the other hero in your SUV range, and in a way more of an enigma, so to say, is the Bolero, which is the best-selling SUV in the country, and it sort of continues to be that way. What really is the secret of that? Because that again been launched in around 2014 years old, and again it's had its refreshes, maybe not to the extent the Scorpio has had, but really that seems to be your staple product, and obviously I'm sure there's a lot of margin and contribution on that. So possibly the most important product for Mahindra and its portfolio. What is it that makes a Bolero tick?
I think the reason for success of Bolero is very different than that of Scorpio. And to some extent, one could even say that Bolero success defies logic, because looking at the product, looking how old the product is, looking at the fact that the origin of Bolero goes back to Armada, what I have seen is that Bolero actually dipped to almost extinction when we had launched the Scorpio, and we were at a point where we were wondering whether we should continue with Bolero or not.
You mean you actually thought of discontinuing Bolero?
Absolutely. It had come down to, I think, less than 1,500 or 2,000 kind of volume. And then it picked up and never looked back. And there are 2 or 3 things that go for Bolero in Bolero's favor. I think Bolero is one of the most no-nonsense, go anywhere, do anything kind of product that you can find in India.
Again, at a good price.
At a very good price. So there is nothing that is as reliable for rural India as Bolero. We have created a little bit of a emotional connect through the positioning of Bolero that we changed about 6 years ago. And that's really the takeoff point was for Bolero, whereby we had positioned as an entry-level SUV from being sort of a commercial vehicle.
And you know, looking at Scorpio and Bolero, great products over here, but in a way, do you think it even reflects some of the limitations of not just Mahindra but the Indian auto industry, in the sense that Scorpio has come after 12 years. Now it's a great brand in India. You've really not made a mark with it internationally. So this whole thing of really being able to go truly global, selling in a wide range of international markets, that's really not happened yet.
I think you're absolutely right, Hormazd. While we, Mahindra and other Indian manufacturers have made good strides in terms of where we were and where we are today, but we still have some ways to go before we can call ourselves truly global, both in terms of the product offerings that we have, also in terms of our brand positioning and so on. There are 2 things that we need to work on. Just getting the right product at the right price with right technology will not be enough for the automotive industry. In fact, it's good for existing players. The barrier entry of the brand itself is extremely high. And it's very difficult for a new brand to establish itself. You can look at the history of how many new brands have come up which have made any mark anywhere in the last 10, 15, 20 years. It's very, very difficult to do that.
That's interesting. You've made the mark over here quite easily. Is it a people issue, also a culture? Because all the processes are there. I mean, Toyota has an open book with its processes, but to follow it is really the challenge, and that calls for tremendous discipline amongst the workforce.
I think it is the whole ecosystem. MNC, when it's following a process in India, still is not using the full Indian ecosystem. They're still relying on their home ecosystem, which is helping them to get the right output, whereas the Indian company has to completely depend on the Indian ecosystem, and that does make a difference. So I think it is not just a manufacturer being able to change the discipline in its own plant. It is all the suppliers, it is the logistics, it is the spares, it is everything that has to sort of come together to create that feeling of being there.
Right.
I should also say that the perceived gap in international market and the real gap, the perceived gap probably is higher because it takes time to build the brand. So we are much closer than what most consumers outside India will think we are, but we are not there yet.
Mahindra is holding ground in the Indian market, but going forward, it does have some aces up its sleeve. More on that when we return. The first automaker in India to manufacture SUVs, Mahindra & Mahindra has become a household name over the years. The launch of its new Scorpio has been much awaited because there's more to the revamp than meets the eye.
I want to talk specifically on the chassis of this Scorpio, which really has been the big talking point of it. It's an all-new body-on-frame chassis. Obviously, it's going to underpin your future products, whether it's the next generation Bolero, Xylo, all the ladder frame products. So clearly, I think that's, I would imagine that is the strategy. But the question is, body on frame, is it a bit now old school in this day and age, because you have the disadvantages fundamentally of weight, and when we're trying to reduce CO2, reduce fuel consumption, body on frame seems to be moving out or being phased out by a lot of manufacturers, but yet you all are persisting with it.
Well, it's a very interesting point, and there's been a lot of debate on this internally and with all the external stakeholders also. See, if we were a company that had 1 or 2 SUVs in a portfolio, then it will be right for us to have a monocoque SUV,
right?
Because that's the trend and that's where everybody is going. But if you are a company that survives and depends and grows on the basis of SUVs alone, then for us to only have monocoque SUVs, I think will be the wrong thing to do. And there is no doubt that the growth in the segment will come from monocoque SUVs. But the body-on-frame SUVs have their place in the segment. There is certain segment of SUV lovers who would not want to drive a monocoque SUV. They would want very much a body-on-frame SUV. And therefore, for Mahindra that specializes in SUV that has 6 or 7 products in its portfolio, to have a good body-on-frame SUVs, I think cannot be compromised with. Right. And the decision that we took at this point of time was that our original platform was made 10, 12 years ago, designed 15, 16 years ago. Time for us to take an absolutely fresh look and bring our technology level of that platform as close to monocoque in terms of the customer benefit as possible and still remain body on frame. One thing that we have maintained, and that actually I don't see it as a disadvantage in many sense, is the ride height, right, which in SUV is actually a positive, that we are riding much higher than what you will do in a monocoque. Right. Of course, that does compromise the center of gravity, and therefore a little bit of a compromise on handling.
Right. And you know, how much have you invested in the new chassis, Pawan? Is there any figure you can share with us?
Not much. Our investment on the new chassis is about 100 odd crores, 100 plus crores. The supplier also has invested significant amount of money, about as much as we have. Right. So for about 200-250 crores, we have this new platform.
Which will go across about maybe 3-4 vehicles.
Which will go across all the new products that we launch in future would be coming on this platform, and this in a way becomes a standard chassis platform for us.
And it's modular.
And it is modular. And similarly, we are doing the same thing with SsangYong, by the way. We are not giving up or going away from body on frame. There also, we will be developing a new body on frame product.
So talking about SsangYong, you know, we just saw the Paris Motor Show recently, the new concept that we had shown, but clearly, you know, the products were very Europe-centric. And this leads me to wonder whether, though you have an alliance, is it really difficult to find commonality? Because, you know, you've got a European very high cost structure, very high demands, vis-a-vis, let's say, a low cost requirement in India. And sometimes an overlap is difficult to find. So whilst you say you want to have a common platform, it's sometimes easier said than done. Is this a challenge you think you would face? Well, because right now, sorry, Tata Motors and Jaguar Land Rover, there's absolutely no common ground as yet. But you all are much closer in terms of their portfolios, but I would imagine it's still a bit of a challenge.
The SsangYong brand and Mahindra brand are positioned differently, both in the home market as well as in overseas market. The SsangYong brand is positioned a little bit more premium, a little bit more European-centric. In fact, Korea also tends to be more European-centric than India is in terms of its products, feature technology, emission regulation, and so on and so forth. Therefore, to share products probably is not going to be very realistic and practical. But to share platform, especially the underpinnings, not necessarily a complete platform, but a lot of the bits and pieces that go in a platform, would be the way to go. And that's where we are doing. We are, for example, we just starting supplies of PTUs from India to SsangYong. Which will be used in all SsangYong products. That will be cost effective for SsangYong. Right. We will be sharing automatic transmission.
Right. I think this Aisin 6-speed gearbox is it a good example of joint sourcing?
It's a very good example of joint sourcing. We'll be doing that. The engine family that we will now be switching over to is coming out of the same platform, the same bore stroke ratio, same machining, and many of the components being common. That's the kind of synergy that we will bring in. A lot of bin parts that we use that you don't see will tend to become common with time, and therefore the products should never look the same. The SsangYong product will have a SsangYong DNA. The Mahindra products will have a Mahindra DNA, but a lot of what you don't see with time would tend to be same.
Right. And you know, you spoke about common engines. I want you to talk a bit on the engine strategy, because you've announced a very ambitious program to develop an all-new engine family, 3 diesels, 3 gasolines. Obviously, this you will want to address your biggest weakness, which is lack of petrol technology, which is becoming a serious weakness now, given the way the prices are moving. So, can you just share with us what's the status on the engine plant, and when can we see the first engines coming out of it?
Let me first say that I'm very happy with the way our engine projects have gone. We have a family of engine that we have developed, which will have a 1.2 liter diesel petrol, 1.6 liter diesel petrol, 1.5 diesel, and an option of doing 1.5 petrol and 1 liter petrol. So basic 1.5, 1.6, 1.2 diesel, 1.6, 1.2 petrol right now, and in future potentially 1.5 and 1 liter petrol. So seven possible engines coming out of that platform. Brand new platform, ground up, developed with SsangYong requirements and Mahindra requirements. So some of these products are more SsangYong centric, some of these products are more Mahindra centric, but will be shared between Mahindra and SsangYong as per the requirements. What we are also doing is looking at the future technologies that we need to bring in. For example, the current gasolines that will come out will not be direct injection, but we know that's the direction, and we will be beginning the work and already started working on gasoline direct injection, because I think the future in India, more than many people believe, will be gasoline direct injection.
With turbocharging?
With turbocharging.
So we can see a direct injection turbocharged engine from
in future, not immediately.
Right.
Not immediately. Immediately, what we'll be launching, the first launches that you will see will be in the X100, where you will see the 1.6 liter petrol and the 1.6 liter diesel. Then you will see the 1.2 petrol and 1.2 diesel in one of the Mahindra launches next year.
Right.
And you will see the 1.5 diesel perhaps in 2017 or maybe late 16 in a Mahindra product. Is the way we are positioning this.
So compact engines fundamentally.
It's sort of our compact engine family.
Mahindra seems to be gearing up to take on the very intense competition that's coming its way. But what are the challenges it's up against? More on that when we return.
The question is, yes, while it's very exciting, you've got a lot happening, it's all a question of focus. I mean, should one be looking at your core business, which is SUVs, or do you think you need to be looking at, let's say, other avenues?
Well, Hormazd, this is a very interesting question and get asked often by various people. That is, Mahindra is spreading itself too thin? Is the core team working on too many different things and therefore losing focus on what is our bread and butter? And there are several ways of looking at it. Clearly, we are doing it because we think it is right. Otherwise, we won't be doing it. And the way we justify it is the following: that yes, SUVs are core and continues to remain our core. Tractors are core, continues to remain our core. But if we were to rely only on these two segments for the next generation, then perhaps we will not have enough opportunities for growth. And we have identified these various segments that you talked about as the opportunities for growth. Now the question comes up is that in that situation, are we ignoring our core of SUVs and tractors and putting our management bandwidth effort into too many different things? And I think that really comes down to the way we are structured. We have a very strong team who are looking at different businesses in their own way, and they remain focused on those businesses. And then below that, they have their own team. So that's the way we look at it. Each business has to justify its own existence. Each business has to have their own management team, their own distribution team. We do take advantage of synergy through the common functions that we have, like in purchase, like in R&D. But these businesses run separately.
And speaking about the acquisition or the majority stake you've taken in Peugeot scooters, can you talk a little bit about that? Because obviously this seems to be a real major, let's say, way to get a big jump up in the two-wheeler market.
Well, first of all, let me say that I am very excited about this acquisition that we have done. Where we will be holding majority stake in Peugeot scooters, and we think that the Peugeot scooter and Mahindra two-wheeler coming together would create a win-win situation for both the businesses, both the business verticals. Both businesses right now are sub-scale, and combining the two in a partnership, in an alliance, will bring us the same kind of benefits that we saw in SsangYong and Mahindra situation. Where we get a lot of areas where we can do some common development work. We get a lot of areas where we have purchase synergy. We'll get a lot of areas as we move forward in international distribution, because we think that Peugeot can improve their footprint from what they have today, and Mahindra can improve their footprint from what they are today if we are working in close alliance. And so therefore these two businesses which are not miles apart, they are different. Mahindra two-wheeler is more of a mass market brand, whereas Peugeot scooter is more of a premium brand, but it is not like being so far away that there is nothing common between the two, just like SsangYong and Mahindra. So it's a very good example, very good comparison. And if you thought that Mahindra and SsangYong made sense, and so far I think we have shown that it did make sense. Similarly, the Mahindra two-wheeler and Peugeot also make sense.
Right. One acquisition, I don't think has really worked well. Maybe it's because of policies or the market, is Riva. I think you had high hopes for that, but that's really not gone the way I think you wanted it to. Also, you know, when you go to motor shows, Paris, you just see the huge strides people have done in EV technology. And what's the status with Riva? Are you going to rely on a homegrown company to kind of take your electric mobility aspirations future, or do you think you would also need to look at some international, let's say, opportunities?
Well, let me acknowledge that we are not where we thought we would be today in terms of the penetration that we have been able to make with electric vehicles in India. So to that extent, it's somewhat disappointing, but we have by no means or no stretch of imagination given up our focus on electric vehicles. We think the time will come, maybe a little later than what we thought it would be. The time will come. Yes, at a point of time, we may have to go to more high-end technology. That we will do when the time comes. I'm not so concerned about that. Our immediate concern
and you could always acquire it because...
Absolutely. Our immediate concern is to grow the volume in India and make the business profitable.
Pawan, last question. I just want to talk on Mahindra moving ahead. You're the only real true homegrown car maker left. Tata Motors is there, but you know, Jaguar, Land Rover is really a much bigger piece of the pie. Yes, you have got SsangYong, but at a much smaller scale. So for companies like you all, which are really facing intense competition right now, what's the way forward for you all?
I think I probably will have to become a little philosophical in trying to answer this question. For me to say that I have no worries will be wrong, but those worries are not new. They were there 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And that the nature of the worry is different at different points of time. If I go back to the days that we launched Scorpio, the many who thought at that time that Mahindra is being foolish in thinking that we can launch a new product and compete with the multinationals who are already there. And we could have given up at that time. We could have said that, look, let's stay on tractors and forget about automotive, and we cannot compete with multinationals. But we came out, took a big risk, and fortunately succeeded in doing so. If we were today where we were 12 years ago, I would say that we are out of the game. But fortunately, in the last 12 years, we have also moved forward in many ways. We have improved our quality to the level where it is almost international. We have moved our ability to do product development almost to the level where we are international. We have reached the features technology, the engine technology, where the gap between what we have and what could be a multinational is not day and night. And therefore, if we continue to keep our focus, if we continue to know what we know and what we need to learn, and learn what we have to learn, I think we can succeed. There is still an advantage in some sense of being an Indian company. We do have a cost base which is somewhat lower than what multinationals would have, but though the gap is becoming narrower and narrower, we do have the support of our large mass of consumers, and I think that is a big sort of benefit that we have going in as an Indian manufacturer, with India being the primary market. The part where we still need to work much harder and where I do get sometimes concerned is that can we really make Mahindra brand and global brand in the automotive arena? And that's where we talked about it quite a bit earlier in this program, that to make that a global brand is going to take a fairly different kind of approach and different perseverance than what we have had in India.
Pawan, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Great talking to you,
Thanks for a real frank chat. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
All the best.
All the best to you.